Okay, now that we have our portfolio all set up with content and targets, it's time to take a closer look at analyzing it in the waterline view. In the waterline view, we'll see the ranked portfolio and we'll be able to create ranking rules that will then reorder and re-rank the portfolio. And that's what we'll see in the waterline view. Now, before we go into the waterline view, let's just talk for a second about the iterative process that we have in portfolio management. Our portfolio will go through iterations, multiple iterations, to rationalize, prioritize, and evaluate. We'll begin some of that in prioritizing and evaluating our portfolio, but it is just the first step in this whole iteration of rationalize, prioritize, and evaluate. What I wanted to say is that in Module 3, we created the portfolio and we can come back to that and make changes to the basic portfolio as we go through these iterations. Also in this Module 4, we analyze with the waterline view and we set the ranking rules. And then in Module 5, we look at alternate portfolio plans. So our what-if scenario planning occurs in Module 5. And then in 6, we look and focus on capacity planning. So all of these are skills that we're going to build separately, module by module, but in real life, in actual fact, this is an iterative process where they're all combining together at some level of velocity going through multiple cycles. So in this module, what we want to achieve are two things. We want to define and apply the ranking rules to our portfolio, and then we want to verify the results in the waterline view. And that's basically the skills that we'll develop in this module. Here are the 5 steps that we're going to go through in this module where we're building the ranking rules and then evaluating them in the waterline view. So we have 5 steps. Select the primary portfolio constraint for the waterline view. 2, select the important investment attributes for weighting to establish the rules. 3, configure the waterline view columns to show the information. So if we select certain columns, certain attributes in item 2, we want to be able to see what those values are. We can add them into our portlet, waterline view portlet, by configuring it. Number 4, give weights to each attribute. And then 5, we actually, once we have the weighting system built, we then in the 5 run the ranking rules as like a job. So those are the 5 steps that we need to march through. We do all of these steps in the waterlines view, and that is addressed or accessed from the waterlines tab. And in the waterlines view, then we'll see our portfolio and we'll be able to go through these steps. And the first one will set the primary constraint. And I wanted to show this in a slide first so that you can see what the values that can be selected. You see the primary constraint, and it's a drop down, and it has a number of selectable items. And right now it is on plan cost. Plan cost is one of the boxes that's down at the bottom of the waterline view, so it's handy to have that one as one of the primary constraints. Or the other 2 good primary constraints that I like to use are the planned operating cost or the planned capital cost. So now let's take a closer look at this. Okay, so I'm in Clarity at the portfolios page, and I'm going to open the portfolio that I have been working with, which is the demo portfolio. And I'll click to open that portfolio, and then it opens into the properties page. And for this module, we're going to be working in the waterlines tab. So we'll select that tab, click on it, and then our portfolio opens in the waterlines view. And this view will default to a ranking that is just a default ranking, and there are no rules set up yet. So it will tend to put the approved investments at the top of the ranking list and the unapproved at the bottom. And then the unapproved, it will tend to put them in order of finish date, with the earlier finish date earliest in this list. So this means at this stage nothing until we actually apply ranking rules, build those ranking rules. And that's what we're going to do. And to do that, we're going to start with going to the little icon. This is where all the action is, ranking rules, this arrow up and down, and there's a drop down. We'll click on that, and it says define ranking rules is one option, and run the ranking rules. So first we'll define the ranking rules in terms of the primary constraint, and then the attributes and their weights. And then once everything is built, then we'll come and then run it, and it will then go through, the portfolio will go through those rules. So right now what we're doing is the first step, which was in the define ranking rules. We'll click on that, and we'll see at the top of this prioritization criteria, we have a primary constraint. And when I drop that down, that's the same box of possible primary constraints that we looked at a minute ago. And here, for now, I'm going to take the planned cost as the primary constraint. We'll look at the effects of that in a minute, a little more detail about that. So that is, we're not going to do the attribute weighting yet. That would be down in this lower portion in here, weighted ranking rules. We'll do that next, but let's just take a look at, by selecting planned cost, we'll then save and return. And now we're back to the waterline view, and I'm just going to run the ranking rules just the way they are now with what we have. And we see that not much has changed. But what I did want to show what happens to this water line, because here's the water line, the yellow gold line through here. I want to show what happened to that when we change the primary constraint. So in this case, we defined planned cost as the primary constraint. And so that was the value, this box that we see here on the left side, planned cost. Those values then are determining where this line is drawn. And it's drawn at a point where where it equals 2,400,000, which is the planned cost target of the portfolio. So it used that as the basis of where to draw the line of what can be in the portfolio if we use planned cost as the basis for determining what can be in the portfolio. Now we're going to change that primary constraint value. Okay, so what I need to do, I'll go to the ranking rules and define ranking rules. And here I'll change this primary constraint, and this time to planned operating costs, save and return, and then I'll go back to the ranking rules and run the ranking rules. And now the water line has changed because it's using the planned operating costs that it needs to be within the budget. So it's setting where the water line view of what can be in the budget, since that's the basis of the water line. Now, step 2 in the define and apply ranking rules is to add the attributes. So we've set the primary constraint, and now what we want to do is add attributes. You can see in the attribute list here in the slide, you see that there are 4 that have been set. And the way that we do that is we click the add button, and that brings up the attribute list that you see. and I pasted several parts of it since it's a scroll window. And actually the way we'll get to these values is by filtering for the attribute that we want to select rather than scrolling through them all, because it's a long list of project attributes. So that then clicking on the add, we select the attribute and then add it to this little table here, and then we'll provide the weighting after that. So the first step is, or from this step, define, apply ranking rules, add attributes. Here, what we want to do is bring in the attributes, bring the list of them in. Okay, so we're back in Clarity now, and what I want to do is demonstrate this from within Clarity, setting the attributes. And to do that, I'm going to go to the ranking rules and define ranking rules. And what I want to do first, I'm going to follow the items that are in exercise 6. So I'll build that as we go, and you can then refer to this when you're doing exercise 6. And in that exercise, I ask for the primary constraint to be set to plan cost. So I'll set that back to plan cost, and now I'll begin to add the attributes. So here I want to click on add to add the attributes, and the first one to add is corporate priority. And I'll just filter for that by just putting in part of corporate and filter. That should bring me a list that's close enough. Look at that, corporate priority, and I'll select that and then click the button add and select more. So now I can continue, and up in the attribute list to filter, the next one is finish. And I'll just do FIN, get part of it to filter, and I want the finish date. And I'll select that and then add and select more. And then I'm going to filter for the next one, which is planned ROI. And I'm just going to here put an asterisk and an ROI and filter for that. And I get budgeted ROI and planned ROI, and I want the planned ROI. And I have one more to do, so I'll do add and select more. And this time in the attribute filter, I'll look for regulatory compliance. So I'll just put reg and see if that brings up the list close enough. And regulatory compliance, that's what I want. I'll click that and add. Okay, so now we have our 4 attributes set to do the ranking rules with. We're going to work on the ranking values in a minute, but let's go back to our main waterline view portlet. So I'll save and return to go back to it. And now what I want to do is to modify, configure the portlet so that some of the values we just brought in the ranking rules, we can see what those are. So let's open up the view a little bit here. And that means to then move this information over. So we see what is in here. And what I want to do is to bring in some of those values that we just looked at. We looked at corporate priority, and we already have finish date is already in there. Planned ROI, I don't think, let's see if it's under here. Planned ROI is already there. So we just really need to bring in the corporate priority and the regulatory compliance. So what I want to do, I want to configure this portlet by going to the configuration tool, and click on configure. And the first thing I want to do is get corporate priority. So I'll scroll down the list of attributes down to C and find corporate priority. And then I'll select that and move it over to the selected columns. And it's down at the bottom. right now. And the other one I want is regulatory compliance. So let me scroll down to the bottom of our list. Here's regulatory compliance, and I'll move that into the selected column with that arrow. And now if I go down to the bottom, I see these two are here, and I can move them up to where I want to see them by clicking the up arrow. And I want to get them up right now next to plan cost. And then save and return. And that then will update the portlet that we created, and we'll have those values in there that we can look at as we do some of this ranking rule stuff. So here's the corporate priority and regulatory compliance. Okay. Okay, so now that we have the primary constraint set and we have the attributes listed, the ones that we want to use to establish the ranking, now the next step is to give the attribute weighting for each attribute. And you can see that the scheme of things is that we first identify a ranking method. We tell them whether the number value that we see is how do we rank it. Higher is better, higher is or lower is better, higher is better, those kinds of things. And then what is the weighting? So some of these attributes can have a higher weighting than others. They're more important. So we weight that in the attribute weighting system. Not shown in here is also a lookup, so that when certain values are not numeric, we need to give them equivalent numeric numbers. So that, for example, corporate priority might be high, medium, low. And so the word high we would give a number to, and that might be the highest number, and low might be the lowest number. And then this ranking method, higher is better, well, it knows those values that we just assigned to the word that associated with priority. So we have several to do that with. Okay, so now let's go in and start putting the attribute weightings in. So again, I need to go to the ranking rules and define the ranking rules. And here's our weighting system. And let's start building this. So the first thing is corporate priority. And those are values, as I was saying before, like low, medium, high, very high. So we need to tell the system, well, what do those mean? And so let's go to lookup weighting. And we see those are the values. A corporate priority could be high, low, medium, very high. And so what we want to do is give those the following weightings. So the high value, or high corporate priority would be 1. A low would be 0. A medium would be 0. And a very high would be 1. It's already 1. Save and return. And our corporate priority, higher is better, so we select that. And the weighting that we want to give to corporate priority is 2. So we'll give that a 2. So relative to the 3 other attributes, this has a weighted ranking of 2. Okay, then finish. Finish, earlier is better, and that's what we want. And it's not as important, so it only gets a weight of 1. Planned ROI. Well, that's a value, a number, and higher is actually better. So higher is better, and the weight that we're going to give planned ROI is 1. And then the fourth attribute is regulatory compliance. And we need to get this into a number scale, so we'll go to the lookup value weighting. And for, let's see, for not applicable, we'll give it a 1. Required for compliance, we'll give it a 4. And supports compliance, we'll give it a 2. And save and return. So now we have number scale values on regulatory compliance, and we'll say that the ranking method is higher is better. And we'll give it a ranking of 4. And you'll notice that all of a sudden some of my other things disappeared. And so in corporate priority, that was a weighting of 2. I see that disappeared, so I got to put that back in. I have to be careful and watch for those things to not stick. So I will save, and that should take care of that. So now we have the weightings applied to our portfolio for ranking purposes. So then next we need to, now that we have it all set, we need to save and return and go back to the water lines view. And here we need to run the ranking rules. So we have to go to the ranking rules and run the ranking rules. And now we've done that. And here are our results. Now, just making sure that everything is set right, even some of the ranking methods can change on you. So one last thing, make sure that these are all set, that higher is better, corporate is higher is better, finish earlier is better, planned ROI, higher is better, regulatory compliance, higher is better, our weights 2, 1, 1, 4. So that all looks good. Save and return. And run the ranking rules. And here's the final result now. So we see that basically all our planned costs gets consumed. The budget, the target for planned cost was $2,000,004, and of that we ended up with 200,000, excuse me, we ended up with 2,200,000 of the 2,000,004 that's above the water line, with the project that's got 600,000 in planned cost that would be below the water line. We can't get that one in based on the ranking. So that's the result now, but in the next module, we're going to start looking at what-if rules through portfolio plans and doing different scenarios. So now you should go to exercise book and to the exercise book and do exercise 6. And if you have any questions on it, you can go back and look at the steps that I went through in the video. Keep in mind the stickiness or lack of stickiness, and some of these values that get put in the weighting system can change on you.